The first race of the European part of the calendar has arrived. And this race will be far from straightforward, as plenty of teams have arrived at the track with numerous upgrades. But that isn't all, as there are plenty of changes to the track and the rules this upcoming weekend, making the race a different beast for the drivers. And some of the drivers won't be too happy about these changes. But according to 1996 Formula One World Champion Damon Hill, all these changes and upgrades will shape the rest of the 2024 season. Even though Lando Norris won the Miami Grand Prix for the first time, Hill said that the Red Bull's pace will remain and that the rest of the field will still have to defeat defending world champion Max Verstappen. Hill continued by emphasizing the significance of the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix for the remainder of the season, saying, "Well, we'll have to wait till first practice on Friday to find out." And I actually feel that this weekend is going to shape the rest of the 2024 season, because Red Bull are bringing new bits, Ferrari are bringing new bits, McLaren of course have their new bits, and Oscar Piastri in the second McLaren will have the full upgrade package on his car. So how it plays out this weekend, I think, is going to give us a lot of clues as to how the rest of the season is going to play. What do you think? Will Imola be a benchmark for the remainder of the season? After all, almost all the teams are bringing big upgrade packages for the race, so it could get very interesting. But as said at the start of the video, the drivers will have to cope with numerous changes to the track and rules. This got very clear when the drivers started their circuit walks in preparation for this weekend's Grand Prix in Italy, as they noticed the big changes in the different runoff areas around the track. There has been significant reconfiguration of the circuit, with gravel traps taking the place of asphalt runoff zones. At the Piratella exit, the gravel trap has moved to the right side of the track, closer to the circuit borders. There is almost no wiggle space when cars swoop through the bend, since the asphalt runoff outside of Acqui Minerali has been completely filled with gravel. The addition of a gravel trap at the end of Variante Alta makes it such that drivers are now permanently eliminated from the race if they make a mistake there, similar to Charles Leclerc's spin during the 2022 Grand Prix. Several mishaps occurred during last month's World Endurance Championship round at Imola due to a mid-race downpour, but the improved runoff zones were already in place. Some have voiced their disapproval of the increasing amount of asphalt runoff in recent years, prompting a shift in strategy regarding gravel traps. Asphalt allowed drivers more leeway and meant that mistakes weren't immediately penalised, but it also created opportunities for track limit abuse, which is an issue now that Formula One has taken a stand against it. Last year's Austrian Grand Prix was the pinnacle of this, with 1,200 offences recorded during the race and cars driving wide many times due to the absence of gravel traps. The Red Bull Ring circuit is expected to make changes for this year, with it also understood that Monza will make modifications at some corners too for this year's Italian GP. The addition of more gravel traps was a driver favourite when the Spa-Francorchamps track was renovated a few years ago. Back then, Carlos Sainz wished for more gravel and grass in the future and said, "Welcome back, gravel." Because it's exactly what I think we all need to make the circuits nice and spectacular again. The curbs at Imola have also been modified, with 2 layers being reinstalled at different portions of the track. Turns 2, 4, 5, 9 and 19 now have them on the left, and turns 3, 6, 11 and 12 now have them on the right. The exit of turn 15, Variante Alta, also now has them. These changes will be a bummer for some of the drivers who love to cut corners, but even if they were to cut some corners, they are in big trouble after some new changes are being made to the rules. So, if track cutting is caught again, the FIA stewards might impose far harsher penalties at Sunday's Formula One race in Imola. Assuming, of course, that teams in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix can come to a consensus on a strategy to avoid moves like the ones Haas driver Kevin Magnussen made in Miami. While serving as Nico Hülkenberg's rear gunner in the Miami sprint race, Magnussen racked up 35 seconds in post-race time penalties. The penalties were well-deserved, according to Magnussen, but they were essential in stopping Mercedes driver Lewis Hamilton from passing his teammate. Among those who attacked Magnussen was McLaren team principal Andrea Stella, who raised the idea that penalties should be exponential, and said that a race suspension would be suitable. In order to deter such incidents in the future, the FIA is working to increase the penalty for repeat offenders. If this strategy gains enough support, it will be implemented in Sunday's race after discussion at Friday's team managers meeting in Imola. The standard procedure is to administer a 10-second penalty either during the driver's subsequent pit stop or after the race. stewards felt obligated to award identical penalties in Miami due to the long-term search for uniformity. The FIA thinks they can handle this by punishing repeat violations more strongly with license points. Even while some drivers, like Magnussen, have suggested changing the policy on giving up places to help get cars out of bad spots faster, no changes are in the works at this time. "I think the best thing would be for the FIA to tell us to give back positions," he remarked. "And then the consequences of not doing that being harsh, like really harsh, so you make sure that that's been done." The FIA does not want this, since it would mean that all 20 cars would need to be monitored by stewards in real time. Alternatively, teams have the option to voluntarily relocate cars following track-cutting violations. This is factored into penalty calculations. But on Sunday's race in Italy, the new approach could already be put into effect if the plan receives broad support among the teams. The new approach supposedly allows stewards to impose harsher penalties for repeat offenders, while treating first offences as usual. Amid long-held concerns over the consistency of stewards' decisions, it is hoped that the proposed changes will afford more room for interpretation and allow the stewards to respond more appropriately to unique scenarios, rather than being restricted by the rulebook. These restrictions were clearly on display in Miami, but even though there is a rulebook, it still is going wrong more often than not. And 2 instances from the Miami Grand Prix, according to Carlos Sainz, showed that the penalty system was inconsistent. The stewards punished Sainz with a 5-second penalty following the Miami Grand Prix for colliding with Oscar Piastri of McLaren, which shattered Piastri's front wing and knocked him out of the points when he pitted for repairs. Sergio Perez moved up 1 slot thanks to the penalty that dropped Carlos Sainz into 5th, but Sainz believes the punishment was unfairly based on the severity of the incident. "I lost minimal control of the car when overtaking Oscar. I unfortunately damaged his front wing and obviously he went backwards 15 positions, and I got a 5-second time penalty," he said. In that sense, I know we keep thinking we don't look at the outcome of the contact, but in this case, I think clearly we're still looking at the outcome. In my opinion, the consequences are still having a bit of an effect in the penalty that you get, which I don't fully share, and I am still a bit puzzled and struggle with it sometimes. Sainz also mentioned an incident at the start of the race where Red Bull's Perez got deep on the brakes, locked up and nearly took out teammate Max Verstappen. Perez should have been punished, according to Sainz, even if the Mexican did not make contact but caused the cars behind him, including himself, to lock up and lose position. "The penalty scenario is one that drivers sometimes don't understand either," Sainz remarked. "In this case, I struggle to understand it, and I'm going to put a very clear example that I even shared with Checo at the start. He completely lost control and nearly took 2 guys out. We were lucky to avoid him. He went off the track and there wasn't a consequence. There wasn't any contact, but it cost a lot to my race and other people's races, and he didn't get a penalty. Because I am completely certain that if Oscar didn't have to pit, then I wouldn't have got a penalty, and everyone would be talking about a good overtake and good action on a track where it is extremely difficult to overtake and you had to go for a move like that." What are your thoughts on the proposed changes? Would you like to see the FIA being harsher with the penalties? And what about those track changes? Will the new and extended gravel pits cause trouble for the drivers? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.